Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our Year 12 interview skills morning with our alumni. I am delighted that we are joined by 7 other alumni this morning who have given up their time to come and speak to you about their journeys since they left Surbiton High School. So if you have any questions, please do ask the lovely teacher who's sitting in the room with you. And you should have all had an email from me yesterday, which gave you a brief outline of who's joining us today. So without further ado, I'm going to ask Ruth to please introduce herself and to tell us of her journey.
Hi, thanks, Polly. I'm Ruth Faulkner. I'm just going to share my screen if I can with you, so that can you let me know if can you just give me a thumbs up if you can see that? Brilliant. Hi. So I'm Ruth Faulkner, and I am currently editor of Retail Jeweller magazine. I'll tell you a little bit more about the magazine in a second, but essentially it's a business magazine for the jewellery and watch industry. So jewellers, watchmakers, designers, they're all the sort of people that read the publication. A little bit about me. I left Surbiton High in 2002. Which is actually, it seems like yesterday, but it's actually ages ago now. I did A-levels in English, Geography, History and Psychology, and I went straight from school without a gap year to the University of Exeter, where I studied history, and I got a 2-1. And then a couple of years later, not straight out of university, I followed that up with a National Council for the Training of Journalists postgraduate diploma in newspaper journalism. My route into journalism was quite conventional, but not, as I said, I waited a couple of years out of university before I did the postgraduate diploma. I did always want to be a journalist, I think, from as long as I can remember knowing what a journalist was. It was something I wanted to do. And when I was in year 11 at Surbiton High, I did work experience on a local paper in Surrey, and that really confirmed that it was actually the job that I wanted to get into. And from there, I sort of started exploring routes into journalism, and I was actually advised by my careers advisor at Surbiton High not to go and do a media studies or a journalism degree, basically because it doesn't really take 3 years to learn that, and actually you're better off studying like an applied arts subject that shows that you can sort of think critically and that you can write, and then follow that up with a postgraduate diploma in journalism. That was the advice I was given, and I really liked history. I found it interesting, so I chose to go and study history, which is one of those degrees that can be applied to lots of different things. When I left university, I had enough of studying and for a couple of years, and I think that I wanted to sort of get an experience in the working world, and also I wanted to save up a bit of money. So immediately on leaving university, with the journalism thing still at the back of my mind, I actually got a job, an entry-level job at a media company, which is actually the media company I work for now. But as an events assistant, helping out with various different conferences and events that they did related to the magazines. I did that for a couple of years, really loved it, but it did confirm that actually, you know, I was organising all these conferences and award ceremonies for these magazines, and actually I wanted to be writing for the magazines. So I left there and did a postgraduate diploma in journalism through the National Council for the Training of Journalists, and it was quite important to me. It was a condensed course, so I didn't have to take a full year out of work. It was basically a year's study, crammed full time into 5 months, and it was probably, of everything I've ever done in terms of studying, it was definitely the thing that I enjoyed the most and the most practical that I could relate to the job that I was hopefully going to be doing. Also, one other key part of the course is that within the 5 days a week that you're studying, one day a week, you do a work placement throughout the 5 months. So you really do get that kind of first-hand experience in journalism, and a lot of journalism jobs do ask for accredited courses. NCTJ was the one that I did. There's also a PPA one as well that are accredited by the organizer the trade associations that sort of promote them, and that's something that some people look for in job adverts. The other thing that's really key for a job in journalism, other than a sort of accredited diploma, which it really teaches you the practical side of being a journalist. So I learned to write shorthand, so I could take notes really quickly. I learned about sort of the law, media law, and the things that you're allowed to report on legally. And also, as I said, the practical work experience side of things. And work experience is so key when you're looking to get into journalism, because when you start applying for your first jobs, they like to see that you've got a portfolio of published work. And you know, you get that when you do work experience. I mean, I was sort of in shock when I went to the local paper in year 11, and they actually had me, I thought I'd just be making tea, and they actually had me writing articles for the paper that were published. And you know, you amass all of that work while you're doing the work experience, and then you have a portfolio of published work. I also, during my university holidays when I was studying history, I did various work experience placements. I was always sort of sending off letters, and I ended up doing placements at places like the BBC. Also, it's a very competitive industry, and it does help to know people. I was really fortunate because obviously I touched on the fact that I worked for a media company for 2 years in a sort of events assistant role. So I'd met a lot of people who were working in media and in magazines. And actually, when I finished my postgraduate diploma and it came to applying for my first job, I was actually able to reach out to some of those people. And that's in fact how I ended up getting my first job. There was an advert for a junior reporter position at the company on a recycling magazine, and I sent off an email to the editor with my application saying, you know, you might remember I worked on some of your events. And I think that kind of recognizing my name definitely helped for me to find a way in. So from there, I've always worked for trade publications, and I started, as I said, on a recycling magazine, and from there I have written about supermarkets for a magazine called The Grocer. I then worked for a fashion title, Drapers, which is pretty much the same premise as Retail Jeweller, the magazine that I'm on today, but it's for fashion retailers. And then I got the job as editor of Retail Jeweller in 2014. As I said briefly at the beginning, Retail Jeweller is the leading industry title for the jewellery and watch industry. We publish a monthly magazine, we have a daily news website that we update every day, and we also organise a huge portfolio of events for people working in the jewellery and watch industry. Day to day, what I do in my role, it really, really varies, which is one of the things that I love about journalism and about being an editor, and no 2 days are the same. It's been a little bit more the same during the last 15 months because I've been working from home and there's been a few less events to go to. But generally speaking, I can be doing anything from researching for a story and writing through to commissioning freelancers around the world to write other pieces for us, attending events to see new launches and products, through to managing my team, working with the designer on what's going to go on the front cover, through to having a meeting with the team about an award ceremony that we're organising for the industry. I know everybody says it, but I genuinely think I have the best job in the world. Not only do I get to write and to be a journalist, which is what I've always wanted to do, but I also get to look at some of the most amazing, beautiful watches and jewellery in the world. I've been able to travel the world looking at jewellery. I also meet some really, really fascinating and amazing people. I was asked to touch on some of the pros and cons of being a journalist. Obviously, I think that the pros really outweigh the cons, but there are a few things that, if it is a career for you, you should probably consider. The first one being that the hours it's not always 9 to 5. It can be a bit a bit, even more so if you work in a newsroom on a national paper, there can be very long hours. But even for me on a business magazine, there is often, weekend work, sometimes evening events to attend. So that's something you have to factor in. But then on the flip side, it does make it more interesting. It's very, very competitive, as I touched on, and difficult to get into. But the pros are, as I said, no 2 days are the same. I get to write every day. I get to meet loads of interesting people, and I genuinely believe that the pros far outweigh the cons. And all the long hours, sometimes traveling away from home, it all makes it worth it. In terms of advice that I'd give to my 18-year-old self, now looking back and what I sort of have learned along the way, I think when I first sort of started doing work experience and training to be a journalist, I was constantly sort of nervous of my work and embarrassed that what I was going to write wasn't good enough. And I used to sort of, when I was on work experience placements, sit for hours agonizing over what I should write, what I should say. Are they going to rip this to shreds? But actually, don't worry about what anybody else thinks. Anybody that does give you feedback, it's always constructive and you learn a lot. And I also think that so don't worry about what anybody thinks of you or your work, and don't be afraid to ask for advice, because most people who work in that field have been in your position and they're willing to give that advice as well. And also networking is so important, especially in media and journalism. Things like LinkedIn are really, really helpful. But when you meet people, stay in touch with them, add them on LinkedIn, take their business card, because you don't know where they're going to be working in future. Media is a really small world. And in terms of sort of making those connections to help you maybe get that first job or to get into journalism, you can't underestimate the power of a network. So that's also really helpful. In terms of interview skills and advice, I feel like, and I promise that they haven't just told me to say this, but I feel like going to Surbiton High School really, really prepared me well for how to approach interviews, because we were so well drilled on revising for exams and doing research and all that kind of stuff, that I always treat interviews like I would do an exam. I really do my research. I really prepare. I put fail to prepare, prepare to fail. You can't over prepare for an interview, I don't think. I do my research on the company. I've even been known to look on LinkedIn and reach out to other people who used to work there to get advice on what they thought of the company and things like that. So I can't stress that enough. Always prepare for an interview, be willing and do your research, be willing to ask questions to those who are interviewing you and to challenge them, because remember, it sounds like a really obvious thing to say, but they're not just seeing if they want to employ you. You've got to test whether or not you want to work there as well. So I think that's really, really crucial and really key. Try to be memorable, not necessarily in a sort of irritating, wacky way, but try to do something that makes you stand out, and always ask for feedback after an interview, even if you don't get the job. And some places are better at this than others, but even if you don't get the job, definitely email and ask why, and if there's any feedback that they can give you. 9 times out of 10 places will come back and elaborate and give you some feedback that you can work on for next time. So yeah, that's everything from me, actually. But if you do have any questions, those can come through to me afterwards, I'm sure. So yeah, that's it.
Thank you so much, Ruth. That was really interesting, and I was so pleased to hear you advising everyone to network and how important it is, and picking up people along the way, because you absolutely never know when they might come in handy again. And again, reiterating what we teach our students all the time about preparation and research, and also challenging, because when you're going for a job interview, as you say, it's got to be right for you as much as it is for them. So thank you very much indeed.
Not a problem, and apologies that I've got such a bad cough. It's not COVID. I've had a test. I've just had a really bad cold this week, so apologies for that.
Absolutely no problem. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you. I hope it was useful.
Yes, brilliant. Thank you. And I'm going to move straight on to Rachel, please.
Hi. Yeah, thanks, Ruth. Now you're going to have to look at my face because I don't have any lovely slides like Ruth has. But so yes, I'm going to give you a bit of a background on me. I left Surbiton High School an awfully long time ago, and I'm not actually going to admit to kind of what date that was. But currently I'm head of insight at Cara, which is a kind of global media agency. So what I do is essentially look at a lot of data and research that I can help companies such as Coca-Cola, Heineken understand more about their customers and then tell them where they need to advertise, be it on Facebook, Instagram, wherever, what TV programs, etc. However, I'm going to admit this now, I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. And yes, as I said, I left Surbiton High School an awfully long time ago. So at school, I did a really strange mix of A-levels. I did biology, chemistry and French, basically focusing on, I suppose, what I liked or was good at, rather than having any kind of great plan for my life. I then went on to Cardiff to do European studies, which essentially is kind of European politics, law and French, which was actually my worst A-level. I admit my choice on where I went to university was also based on the year abroad, which was in Chambéry, near the ski resorts. So it's probably no surprise to you that after leaving university, I did have a year out where I did a ski season in Val d'Isère for 5 months. Coming back, still with no great plan in my head, I did a number of temp jobs in offices in London, and I actually ended up working temping for Deutsche Bank on the trading floor. And I remember I was offered a job by the head trader, and I'd say if I'd taken him up, I wouldn't be sat in Surbiton, say I'd be sat probably in Barbados drinking cocktails, retired 10 years ago. But no, I didn't. I went and got a serious job. Well, so I thought serious job working in a kind of mathematical software firm in marketing in Oxford. After that, again, by no great plan, I joined Nielsen, which is a market research company. And what I actually did was I moved across a number of different disciplines. So I haven't really, so what I've kind of done in my career is kind of gone and got lots of different experiences and not necessarily moved in a way that people standardly have done, for example. So when, and I'll come on to that in a minute, but I did actually use my French degree probably about 15 years or maybe 20 years after leaving school or university. So I lived in Amsterdam and used to travel to Brussels weekly to meet clients. So amazingly, I actually used something I'd studied. Now, as I said, I still don't have any plan in terms of what I want to do. And I suppose unless you want to be an accountant or a medic or maybe a lawyer, the job you end up doing probably doesn't exist now exactly how it will be when you enter the job market. And for example, now I've worked a lot in digital marketing. I mean, the internet didn't really exist when I was at school, so my job kind of absolutely didn't exist. So as I said, what I've done is I've kind of collected a number of different things from everywhere, and I did moves that most people don't normally do. So I haven't really followed a kind of a defined job path, but it does mean that I've ended up with a kind of a mix of skills, for example, kind of digital advertising as well as kind of standard research that other people don't have. So if I was you and you don't know what you want to do, I would probably just be a bit more, I suppose, a bit more structured in I suppose how you record, how you kind of gather all your different skill sets, and I would kind of categorize them into you've got your kind of softer skill sets and your harder skill sets. And I think Ruth kind of mentioned that actually Surbiton High School really prepared her for kind of preparing for interviews, and I think that's really important. But what I find, and I've interviewed a lot of people and lots of graduates as well, so not necessarily people with a lot of work experience, and what I look at is more about kind of the attitude and the aptitude to learn. And that's why I think, you know, softer skill sets are really important. And I always, you know, when I'm interviewing, I always have a kind of theme such as, you know, teamwork, leadership, creativity and innovation. So, you know, I'll ask people, you know, so tell me when you kind of worked as part of a team. And it doesn't have to be a work team. It could have been, you know, Duke of Edinburgh or some kind of university project you worked on. I would also, you know, ask about leadership when you led a team. I also ask about kind of creativity and innovation. So I suppose it's just thinking about, you know, when you've done something proactive or you've driven something forward, just make a note of it so that when you do get to interviews for jobs, you've got that to talk about. Always, you know, also, you know, when you've overcome a challenge, so when you've overcome adversity, how you've gone about it. Also, I think Ruth touched on this, but I always research, you know, if you're applying for a job, you also want to research the company and the industry, and hopefully it is something you're interested about, so you can show that, you know, so have kind of some kind of conversation about that field as well. Also, I think, I mean, I work in data, so you've got your softer skills, which you discussed. Obviously, at university, you're going to pick up much more kind of hard kind of skills, and for me, you know, data is only going to increase as data is going to get more and more. So, for example, if I was at university again, I would probably make sure I did some kind of stats course or kind of coding course, which is useful for manipulation of data. So if you kind of know kind of what field you're going into, maybe look at your harder skills as well. Just I suppose the final point on interviews, and I think Ruth said always get feedback. And actually, when I go for an interview, in the interview, I will say, okay, what haven't I told you that that hasn't convinced me that that I'm not right for the job? And maybe you probably wouldn't do that at the age of 21, but you know, by the time you get to my age, and then it really forces them to explain, you know, what they haven't you know, what you maybe that you haven't convinced them about, and it gives you the opportunity there and then to convince them. Yeah, so in summary, I still don't know what I want to do when I grow up, but I've kind of ended up with a collection of different skills and experiences that will hopefully help me in my next career move. And I suppose my advice to you would be, yeah, probably do it in a much more structured way than I have. But you know, I suppose don't worry if you don't know what you want to do, but yeah, just think about, you know, the extra skills and experiences that you're collecting, and make a note of them, and when you come to interview, you'll have a lot to talk about.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Rachel. Just a very quick question. So what would you tell your 18-year-old self then?
I think probably that, because I did worry that I didn't know what I wanted to do, and everyone had these kind of grand kind of career plans, and I just didn't. So I would tell myself not to worry, because you know it always works out in the end. And actually, you know, I have made some career moves where that haven't, you know, where you know, I suppose it hasn't been the right job for me, but always I've learned something from that, and that's always propelled me to the next job. And I wouldn't have got the next job if I hadn't gone through maybe that year of not necessarily unhappiness, but you know, not having the ideal job. So I would say, you know, don't worry, and everything is always for the best, and you're always collecting, I suppose, new skills. And as I said, you know, one of the questions that I ask in interviews is, how would you overcome a challenge? So it's good to have challenges along the way, because you grow and you learn from them. That would be my advice.
And I really like the way you mentioned when you do interviews about asking people for examples on teamwork and leadership. And I think it's really important to reiterate to our year 12s how important it is to make sure you're prepared and have examples of all that when you go for interview. And I love the fact that you were bold when you go to interviews and ask.
I always do. And actually, just one more thing on interviews, and because I've interviewed quite a lot of graduates, and it's more about aptitude and, you know, keenness and enthusiasm. I mean, that goes so far. So I mean, yeah, no, that person, and sometimes I suppose it maybe people are nervous. They sometimes come over as arrogant, and that there is a fine balance between kind of boldness and arrogance. And so yeah, it's maybe, I mean, that's why you do interview practice. So yeah, just make sure you get your, I suppose, tone right. Be enthusiastic, be keen, because yeah, people don't expect you to have all the skills when you start a job, you know, from just straight out of university, and they're looking for your ability to learn those skills, I would say.
Brilliant, lovely. Thank you so much, Rachel. That's been,
thank you for having me, and yeah, just let me know if you've got any questions.
Brilliant, thank you so much.
Bye bye.
Bye. And now we'll move straight on to Holly, I believe, is with us. Hi Holly, I'm going to just go straight into asking if you could just yeah, talk about life since you left Surbiton.
Oh, we're just unmuting 1 second.
You're okay, you're on. No. Yeah.
Better? I'm live? Okay, good morning everybody. I'm Holly. I was so happy when Polly and John said, sorry, Mr. Owen, got to be formal, and Mrs. Rumbold asked me to come and speak. I think because, like some of the other lovely ladies have said, Surbiton was so formative in who I am. I even once bumped into somebody on a flight to Spain that was 10 years older than me and went to Surbiton, and we were so similar. And I don't say that as a bad thing, but there's just such a nice air about a Surbiton girl. So you guys are in the right place to do really well in life, whatever that is. So Polly, do you want me to, I've got your questions, so I was just going to run through them and also share my screen if that's all right with you.
Absolutely fine, you do whatever you want.
I can do whatever I want. Wow, don't give me that much license. Let me share my screen. I think really the thing to start to say before I get anywhere is, if you can tell a story about what you've done up to that point, wherever you are, you will always manage to come across well and be able to get into pretty much any job you want. And that's something that I got a piece of advice from a family friend. If you can tell a story about what you've done, you can basically do anything you want. And I laughed at the time and didn't really understand why they told me that. But now in my late 20s, I totally understand why they told me that. So let me share my screen and we will kick off. Can you all see that? Does that work, Polly? Do you see the screen?
Yep, got that.
No. Okay. So I'm not saying everybody in this room will want to work at TikTok, but I'm kind of illustrating a point that when I sat in the common room in sixth form, TikTok didn't exist. It wasn't even a thing. I had absolutely no idea that I would end up working for one of the fastest growing social media apps in the world. So one thing to start, you don't know where you're going to end up, and that is always exciting. I think one really great piece of advice before I even start kind of going through the questions that some of you had for me is really, what do you do at university? I feel like that's a really tough question, and one that I lamented over for ages. I did history, Spanish, English language and economics for AS level. I don't even know if you can do that anymore, which obviously is quite broad. And I remember my granddad saying to me, he goes, look, if you can do a subject that you love and that is respected, it can take you anywhere. And again, I really think that is true. So I ended up picking history and politics at university, and I found it so fascinating. And I think I had so much more drive to go to my seminars, want to go to my lectures. I really enjoyed picking what modules I was going to decide to do. I really enjoyed doing joint honours, because doing history and politics meant I got to pick what I wanted to do from history and what I wanted to do from politics. And that really was such a nice mix, and I think really taught me so many skills. So in terms of how that's useful to where I am now, TikTok, if you haven't guessed from the slide in front of us, really just think I learned so much. I learned to write, I learned to question, I learned to solve problems, to think about why something had happened in the past. I mean, you'll laugh, but even in politics, we looked at the potential thought of something like a Brexit at the time and predicting what might happen and the forces in the world. And really, it just taught me about humans and people, and found it brilliant. And again, I did not go in with the thought, I'm going to be a historian, I'm going to talk about the past, but more that I found it really interesting and I thought I'd do well. And I think a subject that you're going to end up doing well at will again take you to places that are really beneficial for you. So I think, let me try and get my next slide. I think my computer and Teams are just never really that friendly with each other. We're more of a Zoom people. Polly, what can you see up on the screen at the moment? Just how to end up at TikTok?
I can see your whole screen, so I can see the slide in the middle and then your 3 slides down the side. Yeah,
oh, it's frozen. Let me stop maybe presenting. It doesn't like it. We don't need a slide. We'll see if it starts working at some point in the near future. I think really what my point was saying about doing a subject you love is really that work experience is where you can start to tell your story that I was talking about, and where you can start to think about things like, what do you want to do? What job do you not want to do? I think a bit like the first speaker that's in journalism was saying, really, what do you not want to do? I spent from the age of 15, my mum was always like, Holly, you must get some work experience, like, as probably most of your parents have probably all said at some point to you. And I really set out in trying to always get work experience wherever I went. And again, this is the importance of networking, ladies, even at your age, like, networking is valuable, whether you're 10 years old or 100, and it always will be. I got speaking to a lady on holiday, and it turned out that she ran Miss Selfridge at the time, which actually quite sad that it's now no longer, sorry, Mr. Green. But I was so interested in fashion. Yes, I did history and politics, but I was so interested in fashion. And I said, this might be a bit forward, but would you be open to letting me come in and maybe learn a bit more about what you and your company does? And I know that might sound bold, and even if you're shy, get your mum to ask, whatever, whoever you're with on that holiday. I really think if you don't ask in life, you don't get. And I know that sometimes might seem too bold or too odd or a bit forward, but my very first work experience was because I asked that woman, Yasmin Yousaf, at the time, could I come in and join you? So from that point, I think I was 16 at the first time. It was GCSE year, and I came in on my Easter holiday. And I had a brilliant time going up to London, and I think from that very first moment it gave me that thirst, and I really definitely want to be here. I want to be in town. Maybe I don't want to work at Miss Selfridge, but they let me try lots of different things. I tried marketing, I tried buying, I tried merchandising, I tried all sorts of things at that point in time. And I really just gave me a love for work. And yes, I know that when you're thinking about staying up to revise for your mock or revising for an A-level, yes, you're probably not thinking about wanting to go to work, but ultimately making sure that in your holidays you do have time to fall in love with the world of work, I think is really valuable. And then I'd say that's even just school, but beyond that, it's the same principle. So I did an internship at Miss Selfridge. I also, again, similar to the first girl that spoke, I worked at the BBC for a week. It was a week again. I wrote to them. I said why I was interested. I said what I wanted to study at university, and just could I come in and shadow somebody. And again, if you don't ask, you don't get. I think they're not always going to come back to you. And I think that's something to really learn, that you do need to be resilient, and you're not always going to get a yes. But I think from having people ignore me or sometimes not reply, it gives you a bit more fire in your belly to keep asking and keep saying, look, I'm really interested in this. I even, after BBC, I thought, wow, journalism, that's really for me. I want to do that. So I emailed everybody from Condé Nast Publishing. I found HR emails and I emailed them my CV, which admittedly was pretty limited at the time, like babysitting, like a couple of things, kind of working at a Richmond Golf Club where we had our prom. I mean, it was quite limited. But the Vogue girl got back to me and she said, look, like, really great of you to message me, but where's your fashion experience? If you want to be here, you need to apply to one of our competitions and show me your designs. And actually that was so valuable that somebody had taken their time to say that to me. But again, it shows you, show your passion somehow. To note things down. If you're in textiles and you want to be a designer, show them your design, show them what you've worked on in your spare time. What's your side hustle? Do you make clothes? Do you sell them on Depop? What do you do? So again, I'd say I've even hit university, so valuable to ask, because if you don't ask, you don't get. And then I went, as I say, to study history and politics at Newcastle. I took a gap year before then, which was a lot of fun, if any of you are planning to do that. I travelled to South America, spoke and practiced my Spanish. Again, would travel in itself, and again, your parents maybe not agree with, it does have its own values. And I think from traveling in that time, I honed in on my Spanish. I can now still speak it fluently because of that. And that in itself has been a skill to get jobs and help me land my first job out of university. So definitely don't put down any traveling as well. And also at university, I did the same thing. I tried things out. I tried out PR, public relations, sort of, again, I don't know whether that's in your horizons or you're thinking about it. I worked at 2 different companies, Freud's and Porter Novelli, again, just asking contacts, people I'd met, applying to things on LinkedIn. Could I come? Could I just shadow? It doesn't have to be an official internship that you interview 50 times for. It is just as valuable. It's still going to give you that experience. And I realised that I liked PR, but I wasn't entirely sure. And that's valuable in itself, because I found the job easy to do as I think I was 20 at the time. And I thought, oh, wow, if I can do this job at 20, is it going to keep challenging me? Am I going to still feel really good about doing it when I'm 40 and greying and still in that role? So I moved on to back to going to journalism, but not to be a fashion designer, because I'm going to be honest, I've never actually physically made a piece of clothing apart from my A-level art, GCSE art, which I'm sure Mrs. Furlong would love to talk about at some point. But again, I then thought I want to try something different. I still love magazines, and I always, as a young girl, always go through Glamour and Vogue and all of those magazines. So I tried the advertising sales team, and I thought the word sales, I thought, oh, I never want to be in sales. But I tried it and I loved it. And the team were these amazing power women. They took me under their wing. They taught me about the value of making contacts, of even just sending out things to creators and influencers, and making lists and organising the diary for the head of advertising, all those sorts of things, which again, as I say, then brought me probably to where I am today, which is, again, first job out of uni, LinkedIn. I applied on LinkedIn. It was August, end of August. Mum was like, Holly, you've been out of uni now for a few months. You've had your fun, probably time to get a job. OK, Mum, probably is time for me to get a job. I got it on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is such a valuable tool. I applied, I went for an interview, and it was to work at a media agency. So again, something I hadn't tried before, but it was chances to travel, working on a global media account. I didn't even know what the account was at the time. When I tell you what it is, not as glamorous as some of the things I've told you about, but it taught me that sometimes you need a stepping stone. Sometimes you need that role that isn't going to be, right, my dream job straight out of university, but it's going to teach me so many skills. I can network from there. And actually, I got to speak Spanish. I even on that job at Havas Media Group as a global account executive, I got to travel. I got to plan influencer campaigns. I worked on Hyundai. Hyundai, the car brand, doesn't feel that glam. I got to travel and I got to meet people. And what you'll find interesting is that from that job, I got invited by MTV to go on a trip, because that's sort of how they're quite interconnected. You've got a media agency, you've got the client, Hyundai, and you've got publishers like TikTok, where I am now, or MTV. People that want you to spend your marketing dollars with, people that want you to come in and get involved. And MTV invited me at the time. I was very overexcited to go to their festival and be entertained for a week. And I thought, God, really, is this my job? I never thought Hyundai cars would leave me to this moment. And actually MTV is where I work next. On that trip, I spoke to all the people that were there, the people that had invited me, and just really showed my best self and just tried to really be 100% on and asking the right questions. And from that, they invited me to interview for actually a job at their company. And again, that is poaching, so technically not really the right thing to do, but I got my job that way. And then I worked at MTV and Viacom, which their wider company is called, for 3 years. I worked on European Music Awards for MTV. I worked on things for Channel 5, for Nickelodeon, for Paramount Pictures, like Rocket Man, that was out when I was working there. I worked on all those things, and TikTok was my client. I noticed TikTok emerge in 2018, and I said to my team, I said, we should really get TikTok involved with MTV. So again, LinkedIn, reached out to the marketing manager and said, I really think you'd be great advertising at our European Music Awards. I think you'd be brilliant. And that relationship that I made at that moment on LinkedIn a reach out again, not asking, not getting. He actually has turned out to be a lifelong friend, has encouraged me to come and work at TikTok. So again, from that moment at MTV, I now work at the company that was my client because you made that relationship and you took that time to ask questions, to really get involved in their business. And of course, I was always treating them like my client. I was never trying to get a job with them. But eventually when the opportunity came up and they said, look, we really have loved you being our kind of client lead, and would you be interested in joining the TikTok rocket ship? We're not much now. People don't really know us, but we'd love for you to come on and work on fashion and retail and luxury. And I thought, this is full circle. This is right back to the girl that was dreaming. My parents used to joke, you want to be part of the fashion office, not the foreign office. And actually, I got a chance to do the job I did, so advertising sales, but with clients that I love and that I work with day to day. I work with the likes of Dot Martin, with Sweaty Betty, with Levi's, and these are people that I get to be creative with and plan what they do on TikTok. And yeah, I think that's probably my story, as concise as I possibly can without my slides. So I hope, Holly, that was useful, and any questions you want to ask me off the bat, I'm really happy to answer.
Thank you, Holly. That was absolutely incredible. And again, I love the fact that you were advising people to network and how important it is. And I just think, you know, at the age of 16, 17, you don't realise how important every person you speak to could lead you to something else. So that has been amazing. And also the fact that you use LinkedIn as you did, and this is why I give a plug for the Green and Silver Club network, which is like LinkedIn but in a very safe space. So we have 1,200 just alumni who are all there to help each other. So it's great to hear your story. Thank you so much. I'm going to move straight on now to Mia. So it's all over to you.
Thank you, guys. Good luck, Mia.
Thank you.
Sorry, can you guys hear me? Oh, you can. Okay, sorry. I feel like I've been not on mute this entire time. Thank you, Holly, for that. That was really interesting. How do I share my screen? What do I click? Sorry, I can't. I can't hear you.
You should have a button, some 3 buttons at the top which show you how to share your screen. It's a little button with an arrow pointing upwards.
Oh,
next to the leave button.
Well, do you know what? I'll just leave it.
Okay.
I feel as though I'm not going to be able to, and then I'll probably somehow kick myself off. Okay. So I guess I'll start. I feel like I left Surbiton maybe more recently than the other speakers. I left Surbiton in 2014. I actually moved for sixth form, so I didn't stay for sixth form, but my time from year 7 to 11 was probably the best years of my life. I really loved it there, and it holds a special place in my heart, and it definitely helped me kind of find out who I am and what makes me tick, and teachers pushed me in the right direction for kind of where I ended up. So I went off and did A-levels in economics, politics and art. And then straight out of school, I decided that I wanted to do a foundation diploma year in fine art. So I went off and studied a little bit more and also had a job on the side just to build up a bit of money. And then I took myself to Cambodia for a month. I volunteered, which was really invaluable, I think, for me kind of before university, to kind of put myself out there and do something that, yeah, really scared me, but at the same time was a really amazing experience in so many ways, but I won't go on about that. I then went on to, I knew I always wanted to study history of art, which was an option for me at A-level at Surbiton, but when I left, it wasn't an option at the new school I went to. So I always knew that I really had an interest in kind of the context of art, like, you know, the historical side of it. So I went on to the University of Leeds and started that and graduated in 2020. So last summer, I left university at a really weird time for obviously everyone, but I feel like graduates in particular are kind of, you know, we were thrown in the deep end with not a lot of guidance because we weren't at universities. We didn't have that kind of one-to-one support that you would otherwise have, didn't really have career talks that you might have. So it was weird, and I didn't really know. One of the questions that Polly sent me before this presentation was, did I have any idea what I wanted to do? And the short answer is absolutely not. And I think you put so much pressure on yourself to have a total clear direction. If I'm surrounded by friends who are lawyers or medics, and I think another speaker mentioned earlier, that's so great for them, and they have such a kind of clear trajectory. But for me, it really wasn't like that. And I think what I definitely would say to all of you guys in year 12 is, don't put pressure on yourself to know exactly what you want to do. I think it's really scary when you come out of uni, because it's the first time in your entire life that you don't actually have something clear, a clear path to follow. And I guess what I did post university was sit with myself and really consider like what I loved and what I think I'd enjoy in a working environment. And I love writing. So I kind of picked out the skills at university that I really enjoyed in the parts of my course that I really enjoyed, and that was writing. And also, weirdly, my friends would always send me their essays, dissertations to proofread, because I'm a bit of a grammar geek. So I really loved the process of going through somebody else's work and editing it. So that kind of set me on this mission of trying to get a job in publishing, but specifically editorial, which is the most fiercely competitive kind of sector within publishing. And I was interested in like fictional publishing. So I really wanted, the dream place for me to work was Penguin Random House. So I started a bookstagram because I loved reading and it was something to do. And I probably sent off well over 100 applications kind of between December and June. No, not June. December and April. Over 100 applications, publishing roles. Got one interview out of all of those applications at Penguin and wasn't successful. And I sort of got to the point where everyone around me was finding jobs and I was stuck at home, and I just thought, okay, maybe I need to put this on the back burner and look for something else, because I think every experience is good experience. You're not going to absolutely find your dream role straight out of uni, which is what the others mentioned, but it doesn't mean that the role you find you might not love, or you're going to learn something totally invaluable from it anyway. So I found out about my current role. A friend of mine, well, my sister's friend, works there for the past 2 years and loves it. It's a company called DeepMind. It's a division of Google. It's an AI focused, an AI mission focused company that was founded by university friends in 2010 and was bought by Google in 2014, I believe. So this was an incredibly rigorous interview process. I had 8 interviews and an assessment. So it was something I'd never ever encountered something like this before. I've had a lot of jobs in the past. I've always had a job throughout school, uni, but they were always one interview in and out. You either got it or you didn't. So I found it very grueling, but it actually taught me a lot about my interview style and how I prepare. So I guess I'll lead on to that question now, Polly, if that's okay, about like my top interview tips. I think when it comes to interviewing, or even before interviewing, what I really, really struggled with, and I think I encourage everyone to maybe even spend a month before you start applying, kind of whittling down, is your cover letter. I can't stress the importance of your cover letter and your CV. Your CV, you have to change for every single role. I would never send off the same CV every time. My process of applying is to look at the job spec and highlight all of the skills that you need, the tasks that you'd be doing throughout a day, and try and put that in your CV wherever possible. But don't make it up, don't fabricate, but try and think of everything you've ever done at school, in clubs, extracurriculum, and put it in your CV, but make it really, really specific to the role, because they'll be looking for those keywords. And then with the cover letter, I think it was trial and error for me. It was months of applying, months of, I joined Facebook groups of people that wanted to also get into publishing, which I really urge people to do, is kind of find people in a similar situation so you can kind of go through it together. And we would transfer cover letters, we would read one another's cover letters, which I found really helpful, but I would get family, friends, sisters, brothers to read over your cover letter, and don't lose hope with it, but also stress the importance of it. And then when it comes to interviews, I think the others have definitely mentioned the importance of research. I think above everything, showing your passion for the company, for the role, and really kind of getting to the nitty-gritty details of the company. I think for someone like DeepMind, their mission is so important to them. I had no idea really about artificial intelligence prior to interviewing. So I really went away and found things that I found interesting. So looked at it within the art realm, because that way I could actually speak really eloquently about it. And other things is do your research on the people that are interviewing you, or try and find some kind of common ground with them, which I think is really important to kind of break the ice sometimes in that initial nerves that you can be feeling. I'm just going to go on my slides so I don't forget some of my tips. I think as well, going through the job spec again with a fine-tooth comb, trying to think of real life examples of when you've used those skills. So say it's teamwork, and you can think of, you know, you're a member of your hockey team at Surbiton. I was a member of the hockey team, and that kind of team morale, it's still really relevant within a working environment. So don't ever dismiss your experience not within, you know, inherent working environment as, you know, not valuable. STAR technique, which you'll probably hear loads about, and yeah, give it a Google and it will kind of run it down, but that's really good to kind of ease yourself into answering questions. I found that really beneficial, and it also makes sure that you're hitting all the points you want to hit. And also just always have some questions to ask at the end to show how interested you are. Yeah, because there's nothing worse than kind of being on the spot when they ask if you have any questions. I think it really shows that you're interested. And then I think my advice to you all, and to what I wish I told myself when I was 18, which was only 5 years ago, is not to compare yourself to other people. I mean, in every instance, but also I think in particular that post-school, post-uni life. Uni is not for everyone, and certain jobs aren't for everyone. Don't do something just because your friend's doing it, and don't let yourself get downtrodden if you don't have a job and all your friends do. I think for me that was a huge confidence knock, and it took me a while to kind of build myself back up again, and now I found a role that I really, really love. And I'd also say one thing, a piece of advice that I got recently that has really stuck with me, is that rejection is redirection. See every rejection as that job just wasn't for you. You know, people aren't horrible. If you have a really good interview but they clearly just don't think you're the right fit, just see it as that, and see it as, you know, you moving forward to find something that's better for you. I realise I haven't really touched on what I'm actually doing now. I can briefly touch on what I'm doing. So I chose, I got this role after many interviews and an assessment, and I am a global mobility and onboarding coordinator, which is essentially, I work in the people and cultures team. So we have scientists coming in from all over the world. So they need immigration support, visa support, relocation support. So I deal with external vendors to make sure this can happen, and that they can come over here as smoothly as possible with their families, if their families need new schools or their partners need new jobs. And then the onboarding is probably my one of my favourite parts of my job. Is when someone starts a new role, I'm kind of the first point of contact. So I give them their welcome talks on their first day. I help them throughout their first few months, check in with them. And I really love that, because I think I've started a lot of roles in the past and I understand how daunting it can be. So kind of drawing on my own experiences. And I don't think it will be it's not really, I don't think, a career for me, but I think it's an incredibly great step in the right direction. It's a great company. There are opportunities for me to go elsewhere in the company and exercise more of the skills that I mentioned earlier. But I think that's everything. Polly, is there anything else? I feel like I've been rambling a lot.
No, that's been fantastic, and I have to say, I'd love to. I'm sure that some of our Year 12s would be very interested in how you got on your volunteering in Cambodia. But I think the most amazing thing was that you wrote over 100 letters and only got one back, and you still bounced back. And I think that's the resilience that we really encourage at Surbiton, as you well know. So that's been fantastic. Thank you so much. And obviously, if we've got any questions, the girl can connect with you through the Green and Silver Club network.
Yeah, or email me. I'm happy to answer emails.
That's absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll go straight on to Lily because I'm looking at the clock. So hello, Lily.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning. I'll leave you to go straight on in with your story since Surbiton.
Yeah, so I think it's definitely right to start with how I ended up studying the degree that I eventually settled on, as I know the students are obviously in the process at the moment of making that decision. So for A-levels, I studied maths further, maths, computing and chemistry for AS. So I was obviously always quite academic in that sort of maths, numbers, science sense. And all through school, I thought I was going to study computer science at uni. That was what I wanted to do from year 8, and I was really set on it. And actually, so that was my first application in year 13. I applied for computer science and I received offers. But when it came to it, I think I'd firmed my choices and I went to another open day at the uni, and I just started to get a feeling that actually I really like this, but I don't think I want to do this for the next 3 years. So cue this crisis that I had for a little while, but made the decision not to go to uni and study computing that year. So then came my next UCAS application and I went complete opposite side of the field. I went to, I applied for social policy and criminology. So I really went from one extreme to the other to something that I had no experience in after a day where I looked at pretty much every course that was available and offered on UCAS to try and find something that felt interesting to me. So I applied for that, got some offers, and then set off on my gap year, did some traveling around Europe, and ended up living in Spain for a few months and studying Spanish there. So I'd done it at GCSE and really enjoyed it, but because I'd always considered myself a maths and science person, I had never considered doing it at A-level or beyond. So after studying there for a few months, I thought, hang about, let's change my degree application for the 3rd time. So with my choices submitted, I got in contact with a few of the unis that I had offers from and asked them if I could change course. Unfortunately, a few of them I was able to, and Sheffield actually were willing to let me study joint honours business and Spanish in spite of the fact that I hadn't done Spanish at A-level, because I had done a language course there for a few months. So went from computing to social policy and criminology and finally landed on business and Spanish, and really was the best decision that I ever made. I absolutely loved my degree, and I just think it's important to tell that story so that people know, you know, you can really change your mind. It's really hard to know what you want to do, especially we do kind of in the UK narrow ourselves just to three or four A-levels, so you can become quite specialised. And even though I did do that, I still ended up doing something completely different. So yeah, like I say, I studied business and Spanish at the University of Sheffield, which I would highly recommend. It's quite a small city, so you're close to everything. There's lots of students there, but the uni itself is great with good support. And I think people have touched on it, but doing a dual honours course I also found just really beneficial. You get to meet 2 sets of people, I studied obviously 2 really sort of contrasting subjects, but also because you only have sort of 3 modules from each side, you can cherry pick the ones that you're really interested in rather than having to just take a lot of modules to fill in the gaps. So I'd really recommend that. In terms of just general uni advice, if you guys, well, please, if you have any questions, ask me afterwards. But I think actually at Surbiton we were quite lucky in that I had quite a lot of sort of interview. I know someone mentioned STAR before. I already was aware of that from Surbiton, and that was the sort of thing that I was like spreading to my friends at university who almost didn't have schools that maybe had built them up so much. But in terms of uni, I think this really applies socially, academically, everywhere. But just like the more you put in, the more you get out. And if you go for it at the beginning, it really pays off in the long run. So right at the beginning, just going to any sort of different events or fairs and joining societies, doing those sorts of things early on mean that you meet a lot of people, and then through them you meet other people, and then you're just in the best possible position really. And I try to still do that now when I start at new jobs and things like that. So that was my time at uni. So because I studied Spanish, I did a year abroad, which also was an amazing experience, a huge highlight. So I spent 1 semester studying in Buenos Aires in Argentina. And then I spent 6 months working in Barcelona in Spain. I was working in sales there, which I quickly knew wasn't for me, but I've definitely lived by the motto that any experience is good experience, because A, it's always valuable on your CV and in interviews to have something to speak about, but B, if it shows you something that you don't want to do, that's also really useful. And even though I didn't want to work in sales, it did show me parts of work that I didn't mind, and it showed me that I did quite like sort of office work and office culture, rather than I know some people who started in office jobs and realised quickly that, you know, they needed to do something really different to that. So those are my few years at Sheffield. I'm not sure if I've got anything else on those. No, so if I move on more to what I'm doing now, so like I say, obviously I had my gap year off uni, and then I had gap year before uni and then my year abroad. So I left Surbiton in 2015, started uni in 2016, and then graduated in 2020, obviously just as COVID hit. So I wrote my whole dissertation from my parents' dining room. But in terms of now, so I'm currently on a graduate scheme at Sky. So it's called the Business Strategy Programme, and we do 4 6-month rotations in different areas. And I'm in the first cohort of a new programme that allows you to really rotate across a really wide variety of areas in the business. So I've done sort of marketing and commercial roles, but you can do PR, corporate comms, HR, loads of different things. And in terms of interviewing like employment advice, I think a few people touched on it previously, but work experience is really valuable. And actually I forgot to mention, I did do an internship during uni before my final year at BT, and I think having that sort of experience is just useful, not just for your applications, but then also for your interviews. At Sky, the application process that I went under was it was brand new, and you actually didn't submit a CV, you didn't submit a cover letter, and you did some sort of really practical online tests. But what I found in my interviews in assessment centres was, even though you didn't submit a CV, the vast majority of people there did have some work experience, whether that was a placement year, an internship, or even some people had been working for a year since they graduated and then joined a graduate programme. So I think work experience is always really, really valuable. I think starting early, so I remember in my first year someone was applying for internships from September, and I thought it was absolutely wild, but then actually realised it's a really clever idea to get ahead. You kind of have to always be checking new jobs that are coming open, especially if it's graduate schemes that you're going for, because they are highly competitive. So I started my applications for my post-university graduate scheme in September, just when I started my final year, actually probably about August, and by November I had a job secured. So it was just quite handy that for the whole rest of my final year I didn't have to worry about any more applications or interviews. I had a job lined up, and then obviously, especially with everything that happened with COVID making the sort of job market even more competitive, I just had as relaxing a summer as possible, given that we were in and out of lockdowns. But then I've just had sort of solid work since then, which has been useful. And I know someone mentioned it before as well, but CVs and applications have to be tailored to jobs. I remember when I applied for jobs on my year abroad, I was just sending out the same CV every time, and then I went to my sort of university career service and was like, I'm just really not having any luck. And they were like, why do you think that is? If you send the same sort of generic thing to loads of different companies, you're not going to get a good response. And actually, on the note of the career service, I think one huge piece of advice I have with uni is to make the most of all the facilities and services that are available to you, which I think a lot of people often don't even know are there. So like I just mentioned, the career service, you can go and have your CV looked at, specific applications they can help you tailor for, interview experience, but then also just lecturers. So I tried to share this with as many of my friends as I could during university, but you can really make the most of the knowledge. Well, your lecturers generally are the people who are marking your exams and your coursework. So not having a good relationship with them because they're going to favour you, but every time I wrote an essay plan, I would take it to them, just say, can you just have a look over this? Am I going in the right direction? And A, you obviously get a lot of good insight from them, but B, it means when you're writing your work, you know that you're on the right track, so you can sort of have the confidence as you're writing your essays. So I remember in my first year, I'd be writing work and thinking, am I even doing the right thing here? But you have to just carry on typing anyway to try and get through it. So making the most of your lecturers, any other, even if they're not for your module, just, mentors and things like that at university, make the most of those opportunities and the skills that are sort of there for you. Have you got any questions for me, Polly? I don't know how long I've been speaking for.
No, that's absolutely fine, and I think you're a fantastic example of, you know, having being completely set on one course and then being able to change. And I'm sure, you know, there are many students we've had in the past who've gone to university thinking they're going to do X and end up doing Y. So it's great to hear your experience about how you were able to do that. It's been fantastic, Mia. Lily, sorry, it's been great for you to join us, and thank you very much.
No problem.
And obviously, if we've got any questions, we'll fire them to you afterwards through the network.
Yeah, please do. If anyone has any questions or any help about Sheffield or university in general, just send me a message, or Sky if it comes to that in a few years' time as well.
Fantastic. That's brilliant. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we'll go straight over to Rosie.
Hello. Sorry, you have to apologise. I've got. I have to apologise. Sorry, I've got a dog on me. That's sorry. He's fallen asleep and he's too heavy to move. So there we go. So I left Surbiton in 2012. So it feels like a lifetime ago. My story's a little bit different, I guess, to everyone that has spoken. So I'll sort of talk to you a little bit about that, really. So at Surbiton, I was the sort of person that would be sitting in Mr. Owen's office quite often in a bit of a state, like not wanting to do the work, not wanting to be at school, didn't really know what I wanted to do. I remember going through UCAS, going through all of the different courses, going, what can I do with the, you know, I wasn't one of these A-star students. I wasn't sort of someone that got, you know, 7 A-stars or 11 A-stars at A-level or GCSE. I know you guys have 1s and 2s and things now, but I was not one of those people. I was someone that, in my head, I thought, you know, I'm at lower down academically than everyone else at Surbiton. And I remember people telling me, Rosie, you're comparing yourself to a very good, you know, academic school with, you know, you're not thinking about the rest of the country. So that was, you know, and I was thinking about my exams and things like that, which in the grand scheme of things isn't the be all and end all. It is important, but it isn't the be all and end all. So I actually got some amazing help at A-level from Mrs. Cowie. I don't know if she's still working at Surbiton, but she helped me a lot with my psychology because my predicted grades were pretty awful because I refused to go to class. I didn't do the homework because I just didn't want to. I was one of those sorts of girls. So if any of you are out there, you know, I'm not going to say it's okay to not do your work, but I'm going to say, you know, you can get through it. So I'll just do this because if he's going to move out of the way. Go on. Sorry. Yeah, so I remember on results day that I refused to open my results because I was so scared. I was absolutely scared. And Mr. Owen came up to me and my mum, and we sat in the staff room in the sixth form centre. Sat in the staff room with the letter, and Mr. Owen went, Rosie, you've done better than you think. And I was like, no, I haven't. I'm not going to get in anywhere. I'm not going to have got my grades. And he was like, Rosie, you've done better than expected. And I was like, how do you know? And he's like, well, I already know. And I didn't know that they knew the grades first. So he really helped. But I sat with him and my mum and we opened my results. And I actually got an A in psychology. I was predicted a D. So I don't know how, but I did well. And that was the one I did well in. And I got into Bristol to do childhood studies. I didn't want to do childhood studies, but I didn't know what else I did want to do. Everyone around me was telling me to be a teacher. And I was like, I don't want to be a teacher because I don't want to do a degree that's going to pigeonhole me into just being a teacher. Even though since I was 4, I'd always wanted to be a teacher. When I was 17, I decided that's not what I want to do anymore. So my mum was very much, we want you to go to university, not because, you know, it's all about academics and stuff, but we want you to do something with your time. so on the day of results, I got a call from Miss Hayden, who's not your head now, but she was a few years ago, and she said, right, come to my office, we're going to get you into a university to do psychology. And I was like, why? I had not really any idea. I was like, why do I want to do psychology? She was like, well, you got an A. So I can't, it's not clearing, but it's when you do better than expected in your A levels. I don't know what it's called, I can't remember now, but I got into Reading through Miss Hayden calling Reading University and going, we've got a student who's done better. She's actually was predicted a D and got an A. I think 2 marks off an A star, which is really annoying, but it is what it is. Can she come and do a degree in psychology? And at the time I was like, yes, sounds good, awesome. Didn't really know anything about Reading, didn't know anything about this, you know, I didn't visit it because it wasn't on, I think I'd visited Bristol once, and that was about it. And I visited Durham and I was like, it's too far away, I don't want to go to Durham. So yeah, I accepted a place at Reading to do a BSc, so it was Bachelor of Science in psychology. I'm not a scientist. Let's just get that straight. I'm not a scientist. So I didn't really understand the difference between a Bachelor of Arts in psychology and a Bachelor of Science in psychology. But at that time I was like, wow, I've done better than expected. This is awesome. I'll go and do this degree. I went to Reading, still hadn't visited it, and didn't really know what to expect. I don't think I'd actually been to the careers advisor. I don't think I'd actually utilised what Surbiton had on offer. I don't know why. I just didn't, and it is a regret of mine now. And I should have gone and visited Reading as soon as I got in. And I remember my parents saying, let's go visit it. And I was like, I don't want to go. I don't want to go. And the day of going to Reading, I think I locked my parents out of the house because I didn't want to go. But anyway, I did go and I had a great first year. I think I partied a bit too much and I didn't really know what to expect with suddenly going from being at Surbiton where there's so much support and guidance to then going to university where there isn't. You know, you are there to do the work. You can't just, you know, knock on a staff room and go, Miss Cowie, can you help me please? I'm a bit stuck. You can't do that. And I didn't expect it because I didn't listen at Surbiton. I didn't listen to what they were saying and I just didn't. And so I went out quite a lot. I masked how I was feeling by going out and masked the fact that I was really struggling with doing a Bachelor of Science in psychology. It was too hard for me, but I was embarrassed to sort of say anything. And I actually, you know, they say your first year doesn't count. You have to get 40% to pass your first year of uni. So I thought, you know, I can scrape by. It's fine, it doesn't count. So I carried on going out and having fun, made loads of friends. And I had a great year, but I didn't hand any assignments in because I couldn't physically do them. It was too academically hard for me. And I didn't understand it. And I didn't reach out to my, I can't even remember what they're called now, my personal support advisor at Reading. The university was great. The culture was really good fun. It is weird being in a girls' school from going, you know, being around girls the whole time. And I've been in a girls' school since I was 4. So from going from 4 to 18 just in a girls' school to suddenly living with boys and being around boys, you know, no one really talks about it. It's hard and it's very weird. You might get a lot of attention from boys and necessary, you know, and it is weird. And I think it's something that, you know, you probably do get talks at school about, but it's something I'm happy to come and talk to you guys all about. But it is a weird experience, especially coming from all girls school. But I decided, I think I decided at Christmas that I don't want to do this degree. I don't want to do psychology because I'm really struggling with the actual degree side of it. But I was having fun, so I didn't really want to leave. But I spoke to my parents and said, you know, I don't want to continue this. And I had a very bad experience when I was at Reading. I actually got, somebody spiked my drink, and that was a very scary experience. I won't go into it now so much, but it was something that was really, really scary. And I went home to my parents and it was really scary. I didn't really, you know, I hadn't listened to the advice given to me at Surbiton or by family friends. So I left Reading, not because I'd failed, because I didn't set myself up to do well, because I didn't understand, I couldn't do the degree, it was too hard. And, you know, that's okay. So I left Reading, knowing that I had to do something, that I wanted to do a degree, but I had absolutely no idea. I was 18, okay, 19 by this point. 19 years old, you're not meant to have your whole life figured out. It is okay to be sat at home and going, I have absolutely no idea what I want to do. It's absolutely fine. Go and experience things. You know, everyone here has sort of talked about all these amazing things that they've done. I've travelled here, I've done work experience in this top company, this. They're all great. But if you're not one of those people, it doesn't mean that life is not going to be okay, that life's not going to be great and you're not going to experience amazing things. You are. It just might be a bit different, okay? So my parents said to me, right, Rosie, you've got to do something. If you're going to live at home and you're not going to do uni for a year, you're going to have another year out, what are you going to do? And I was like, I'm going to go and train to be a personal trainer. I don't know why. So I went and studied personal training, and I did an amazing course with the Army and the RAF. Completely random. Had a great time, learned a lot. I was really interested in anatomy and human physiology because I have a condition called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, so I'm in chronic pain. So I wanted to understand what was going on in my body and how I could best support it. So I studied that. I worked as a personal trainer for about a year. Didn't enjoy it, but I was earning quite a bit of money. I was doing well. But again, there was that nagging kind of, this isn't what I want to do forever. So what do I need to do in order to get to a point where I can be completely content with what I'm doing? I'd got qualifications as a nutritionist, as a PT, as a level 4 back pain specialist, and as a sports masseuse, all useful. Okay, just because it's not degree doesn't mean that qualifications aren't useful. They are. And you'll see why in a minute. But I then, my mum had a sort of serious chat with me and said, right, Rosie, you're about to have spinal surgery. And actually I had spinal surgery today, 7 years ago, so 2 years after leaving Surbiton. So I had to have spinal surgery from an injury from gymnastics, and I couldn't be a personal trainer anymore. So I had to sort of rethink and go, right, what can I do with the body I've got and with the time and with what I'm good at? Okay, I'll listen to my family, I'll listen to everyone, I'll go to uni and I'll study teaching, which I did. I went to Roehampton because it was close by. You know, my friends at this point had nearly finished their degrees, and I didn't want to go away from London when everyone else was coming back. So I stayed in London. I worked at home, and I decided, right, I'm not going to live in halls because I'm not going to do the whole going out, that sort of thing. I'm here to study. I'm going to go in, do my lectures and leave. So I did do that. I did my 3-year degree. I specialised in special and inclusive education. I got to teach in all sorts of different schools. And I was a teacher in an autistic unit. Absolutely loved that. Loved teaching kids with autism. but realised that because of my physical condition, it was really difficult to do that full time. At this point then, when I graduated, I had moved in with a boyfriend. We had our own apartment in Twickenham. All was great. I took a job in Richmond as a teacher, as a head of science. Don't ask why I was put as head of science. I should have been head of English, not head of science, but anyway. And I took a role taking a brand new school as their head of Key Stage 1. So that's head of all the year 1s and year 2s, and their first year of SATs and Ofsted. I did this whilst in a very, very bad relationship, something that I was being very, very badly abused, very, very, very badly beaten all the time, and I was really suffering. And actually tomorrow, 3 years ago, my ex-partner tried to take my life from me. And that, I kind of spiraled everything out of control, because I was thrown from being this happy person that, you know, was a teacher and all of these things into, right, mental health is now something that I had to learn how to understand myself. And my ex-partner took everything from me, to the point where I was literally just a slave. So I left that relationship and had no idea of who I was anymore. I was about 45 kilos and I'm 60 kilos now. So you can imagine, 15 kilos less from where I am now. I was broken. And it's taken 3 years really of understanding myself and understanding healing to get to a point where now, you know, the anniversary of that horrible D-Day is tomorrow and I'm okay. And what I have done since, because I didn't go back into teaching, I built a business, and I now run the world's first mental health gym. It's called Kind Cody, and we basically go into corporations, to different companies, and we support their employees' well-being. We support their physical, nutritional and mental health. And I absolutely love what I do. And it brings everything in full circle because I use my personal training. I use what I learned in my psychology degree. I use my nutrition degree, my nutrition qualification. And I bring all of that with my teaching, my education into the degree, into my business. And we are, you know, I have 20 staff that work for me, and I have a team of absolutely fantastic individuals, and I hire people that, you know, I'm not massively into hiring people with the best degrees in the world because that's not me. That wasn't me. That's not where I came from. I came from having, you know, real struggles, and I like giving people the opportunity that they don't get in other companies because, you know, no one can have 6 years experience and be 18 years old. It's not possible. So I think, you know, I overcame one of the hardest adversities in my adult life. You know, I'm very privileged, and as we all are at Surbiton, you know, but I went through something that was completely life-changing, and, you know, I think I was sort of given a second chance at life, because I wasn't supposed to survive that night, and I did. And I'm here today to tell a story. I'm here today running a company, developing the resilience that was needed to do what I do now. And I absolutely love it. I get to work anywhere in the world. Right now it's at home. You know, have my dog on my lap, have my 2 dogs with me, you know, work when I want to work, and use all of my skills, all of my work experience to run my own business. And I love it. It's great. So I think, you know, what advice would I give to someone who's 18, to my 18-year-old self? It would be, you know, Rosie, work a little bit harder. But to you guys, my advice is accept what you can't control. Accept the things you can't control, because, you know, you can't control tomorrow. You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Control what's here right now. Control your attitude. Control the actions that you're going to do towards somebody else, towards yourself, towards your family. Keep the people that are really good to you, keep them close. Get rid of the people that are vapid, the people that don't bring something special to your life. You know, life is actually quite short. There's no point in spending it with people that actually don't bring you joy and bring you something that brings greatness to your life. Passion equals purpose. Find what you're passionate about, and that is your purpose. Your purpose is not to be a mule for somebody else every single day. That's not your purpose. Your purpose is to find your passion, and within your passion you will find what really sets your soul on fire, and that is what you want to do every day. Because life can feel really long when you're doing something that is horrible, when doing something you don't enjoy. But life goes so much faster, and so much more fun can happen when you do something that you love. And I promise you, you can do something you love if you put your mind to it, even if it's hard work to get there. Remember, being human is hard, okay? No one says it's easy. No one's here telling you that think positive and suddenly life's going to be positive and amazing. You know, being human is hard. It's not. It is a journey, and you're going to go through ups and downs. So learn about yourself, learn the things that help you when you feel rubbish, learn the things that are there for you when you feel great, but also the people that are there for you when you're not feeling as amazing. And remember that pain and struggle help you to become strong. They help you to develop resilience and the skills that you need to be successful in your own life. And I think I've talked for quite a while, but interview tips is just be yourself, be authentic. Don't go in pretending you've done 12 years of experience when you haven't. You know, CEOs, when I have 300 applications I went through last week, and all of them, like most of them, are all the same. I look for someone that's something a little bit different, you know, and it's not someone that's got the most experience. It's someone that has a spark to them, that shows a little bit of difference. Someone that I can go, do you know what? This person is going to love what they do. I don't care about your academics. I don't personally, as a boss, care about your A-levels. I care about what sets your soul on fire and what passion are you going to bring to my business. And that's what any CEO wants. They want people that, one, going to be talented at what they do, but it's their business. It is my baby. I want people that love what I do as much as I love what I do. I think I'll leave it there. But I always am open to any of you. If you want to come and do some work experience, you want to understand well-being, you want to understand what it's like to run a business, you want to understand marketing, social media, because I do it all. You can come meet my team, come work with us. We do a lot of filming. We have our own studio where we film all of our classes, albeit it's not in London, but we do have an office in London as well. But yeah, anyone that wants to come and speak to me about running a business, hiring, firing, everything in between, I'm here.
Rosie, thank you so much.
No worries.
What a journey you've been on. And certainly, as I said, if any of our Year 12s want to get in contact with you, they can do that via our Green and Silver Club network, because obviously we need
I just updated the profile.
We need to keep everybody safe. But thank you so much for joining us.
No worries.
And that concludes our session. So thank you all. I hope you've enjoyed yourself, and do email me if you want if you want to be put in touch with anybody through the network. Thank you very much.